Hello, my name is Eric Willison. I'm an attorney certified to practice in the state of Ohio. That means I'm not certified to practice in other states that you may be in, because right now I'm only certified to practice in the state of Ohio. The laws of the various states with regard to landlord-tenant are very different. They can be the same, but they're also very different. So you would be unwise to listen to this video if you are from a state other than Ohio. Secondly, while I may be a lawyer, I'm not your lawyer. That's because I've never met you, I don't know the facts of your case, and you've never hired me. This is an informational video only. It's not legal advice. You're not my client. I'm not your attorney. More's the pity. We're talking today about defenses to evictions. In previous evictions, we've talked about the three types of defenses. One would be a merits defense, like you didn't pay the rent, yes I did. That sort of an argument. Another secondary argument would be a legal argument. And then a third would be a procedural argument. Today we're going to be dealing with a legal argument to an eviction. And that comes to us from Ohio Revised Code 5321.05. Now, the Ohio Landlord-Tenant Act of 1974 is Ohio Revised Code 5321. That was enacted back in 1974, and it's still good law today. Now, the act is broken down into about 18 or 19 subsections, but the subsection we're mostly going to be concerned with today is the fifth subsection, which lays out the tenant's duties to the landlord, just like the fourth subsection lays out the landlord's duties to the tenant. But we're going to be dealing with 5321.05. And it's not going to be obvious at first as I go through 5321.05 what any of this has to do with an eviction. But here we go. 5321.05, tenant obligations. A tenant who is a party to a rental agreement shall do all of the following. Shall keep that part of the premises that he occupies and uses safe and sanitary, dispose of all rubbish, garbage, and other waste in a clean, safe, and sanitary manner, keep all plumbing fixtures in the dwelling unit or used by him as clean as their condition permits, use and operate all electrical and plumbing fixtures properly, comply with the requirements imposed on tenants by all applicable state and local housing, health, and safety codes, personally refrain and forbid any other person who is on the premises with his permission from intentionally or negligently destroying, defacing, damaging, or removing any fixture, appliance, or other part of the premises, maintain in good working order and condition any range refrigerator, washer, dryer, dishwasher, or other appliance supplied by the landlord and required to be maintained by the tenant under the terms and conditions of a written rental agreement, conduct himself and require other persons on the premises with his consent to conduct themselves in a manner that will not disturb his neighbors' peaceful enjoyment of the premises, conduct himself and require persons in his household and persons on the premises with his consent to conduct themselves in connection with the premises so as not to violate prohibitions contained in chapters 2925 and 3719 of the Revised Code, or in municipal ordinances that are substantially similar to any section in either of those chapters which relate to controlled substances. B, the tenant, there's only going to be very few more. B, the tenant shall not unreasonably withhold consent of the landlord to enter into the dwelling unit to inspect the premises, make ordinary, necessary, or agreed upon repairs, decorations, alterations, or improvements, deliver parcels that are too large for the tenant's mail facilities, supply necessary or agreed services, or exhibit the dwelling unit to prospective or actual purchasers, mortgagees, tenants, workmen, or contractors. Now, these are the things that the tenant needs to do. If the tenant violates any provision of this section, other than A9 of this section, the landlord may recover actual damages that result from the violation together with reasonable attorney's fees. The remedy is in addition to any right of the landlord to terminate the rental agreement, to maintain an action for possession of the premises, or obtain injunctive relief to compel access under Division B of the section. Now, rather than getting into C2 and all of that, the important thing is that much of what you see in 5321.05, the tenant's duties to the landlord, is generally also going to be in your lease agreement. You know, you're not supposed to unreasonably withhold permission from the landlord to come in and do certain things around the premises that are things like showing it to other possible renters. You're not supposed to act in a way that's going to, hurt or disturb other tenants, that sort of thing. Now, landlords may want to use these breaches as a basis to evict you from the premises, and they can. But Ohio Revised Code 5321 states that if the landlord wants to use a breach of the tenant's duties to the landlord under 5321.05 as the basis for an eviction, then the landlord must first give 30 days notice to the tenant to stop breaching 5321.05. So if you're making too much noise and you're bugging the other tenants, then the landlord can give the tenant notice under 5321.05, you are making too much noise, I'm giving you 30 days. Now, if during the next 30 days, the tenant keeps on disturbing people, now we can go to an eviction. But you have to give that warning first. What if it's something where the tenant needs to, usually the tenant's not the one who has to fix things, but what if the tenant has to do something here? So like he has to dispose of all rubbish, garbage, and other waste in a clean, safe, and sanitary manner. Well, if he's got, garbage bags piled up on the porch that he just sort of sometimes takes out to the curb on trash day, other weeks he doesn't, it starts to stink, it's unsightly, the landlord gives the tenant notice under 5321.05, hey, you gotta clean that stuff up, and if the tenant doesn't do it in 30 days, then the landlord can go and evict the tenant. But 30 days is a long time to wait. So a lot of landlords will say, well, I got a clause in my rental agreement that says no dogs. Well, there's nothing in 5321.05 about no dogs. So if you violate a clause of the lease agreement that's not in 5321.05, you don't have to give 30 days notice. You can just go right to it, 3-day notice, and off you go to the races if you're a landlord. But what if the lease says the tenant shall not allow garbage to pile up on the porch, and 5321.05 says that the tenant has to dispose of all rubbish, garbage, and other waste in a clean, safe, and sanitary manner? A lot of landlords try to say, well, that's a violation of the lease, and therefore I only have to give 3 days notice to vacate, and I can start my eviction. No. If it's a violation of both the lease and the law, then you have to give the 30-day notice first. And a landlord that doesn't do that is going to have trouble. And that trouble is going to come in the form of the judge saying, case dismissed, once an attorney from the other side points that out, or the tenant, if the tenant is literate enough in his or her legal rights to understand the distinction between 5321.05 reasons for evicting the tenant versus just straight out lease agreement issues that don't impact 5321.05. So that's another pitfall for a landlord trying to evict somebody. You have to look at what is the reason that you're trying to evict him. And if the reason could be described as one of these duties that the tenant has under 5321.05 and isn't doing, maybe you got to give him 30-day notice. You better check with an attorney. But if it's just paying rent, if it's just making sure that the people that are there are authorized to be there under the lease agreement, nothing in there about 5321.05 about that. Nothing in 5321.05 about an unauthorized dog. So be careful what reason you are giving for the eviction. You may have to give the extra 30 days notice.